Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another romantic dinner with the DM. Today, we have with us a very special guest, but before we introduce them, let's introduce ourselves. My name, of course, is Arcad, and I'm joined by the ever-lovely
Prime.
And today, we have a very special guest. I'll be honest with you, though, listeners, all of our guests are very special, so, don't forget it. Don't you ever forget it. Today, we are joined by DM and friend and Twitch streamer, Ryudowski, or Ryu. Hello, Ryu.
Hello.
Oh, so excited to have you here today, Ryu. We've been doing some chatting with Ryu before the podcast. We're so sorry, y'all, but it's okay. We're gonna revisit it. And let me just tell you, I am so excited to hop into some of these questions. It is gonna be exceptional.
Yeah. This is one of those times when it's like when we have so many things like, when we come up with our questions, when we do this show, we never, we do a little bit of talking ahead of time and we know a couple of things. Maybe we know a bit about the person's campaign. Obviously, if you listen to our first episode, we were intimately involved with that campaign. But with this one, Ryu's been keeping us in the dark. He's been making sure that we don't know everything going in. So this is going to be very exciting for us to learn about and for you listeners to learn about.
And hopefully for you too, Ryu. It'll be good to hear this incredible world and these incredible characters you filled it with. I cannot wait.
Agreed.
Yeah. When I was kind of processing the fact that maybe some questions would be asked about this, either previous campaign or the current campaign, I was thinking, how am I going to answer that without my current players running into any spoilers? So it's definitely going to be really, really cool to kind of revisit some memories and touch on some new ones that are currently being made. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's amazing.
Excellent.
And they're going to be listening. We know it. We know it.
Yeah, they are.
Oh yeah. So let's start out right at the front, right in the center. Ryudowski, if there were a D&D version of Tinder, what would your bio look like for prospective players or just other folks where you're letting them know about it?
Oh, of course. So there would have to be a cheesy equivalent of a pickup line there. There kind of has to be.
Of course.
But yeah, so my name's Ryudowski, also known as Owen. I stream on Twitch. I've been a dungeon master for 3 years now, I believe. Coming up to 3 years. Giant weirdo. Advocate of just being different, weird, and just socially unaccepted, basically.
Oh, beautiful. That's what I love. That I love that immediately.
Swipe right.
Match.
Beautiful. So a DM for 3 years now, and player before that. Let us know what's your history with D&D and TTRPGs.
Of course. So apart from 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, I don't have any history with tabletop RPGs. So before this group that I'm playing with at the moment, I'm running this current second campaign. I ran a 2.5 year campaign before, and then I was a player before that for coming up to 3 years, where I played the same character throughout, which I'm quite lucky to have that, I think.
Yeah.
It kind of just came across that, I started a new job, and then my manager at the time was like, hey, talking to some other people that work there, we're going to be starting up Dungeons and Dragons soon. I was like, I have no idea what this is. What is this? So he started talking to me about some stuff, and I was like, cool. Can I watch? Can I play? He was like, yeah, we'll look at this, come over, we'll have a chat about some stuff, and that happened, and we all decided on races and classes in secret, which was cool.
Okay.
I've kept that with me forever. Whenever I'm running one shots or anything, I always get my players to keep it secret.
I like that. That introduces a really neat dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really, really cool. So like when we were playing, we almost we knew briefly like kind of what each other were in terms of class, but stuff like race and stuff like that only came into play when we were describing ourselves. So we didn't say, "Hey, look, half elf." It'll be, describing the texture of my skin and like the angular jawline and the tip ears, and everyone's like, wonderful.
Very cool. So kind of like it almost like the verbal equivalent of kind of like drawing a sketch, like you're sketching it out in words. I love that.
Yeah.
I live for descriptive language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's what was really not difficult, but everyone there had like played an iteration of Dungeons and Dragons before.
Okay.
And they played like some I think it's 3.5. So yeah, they were like very aware of the whole situation, and I was completely blind. So yeah, like I played for a bit, and then I just thought, I got to DM this.
So let's talk about that then. So that's something where obviously, it seems like when you got into D&D, you got in and you've never let yourself get out. It's something that's just captured you and taken over. And since you started as a player, obviously being like first time introduced to it, and then you've moved over to the DM side of things and running a 2-year campaign there, or 2-year plus, that is no small feat. So having spent the time there, I think I know we know the answer to the question, which side of the table do you prefer? But I guess, why do you prefer the DM side of it so strongly?
I think I think I'm quite protective over players at the table and everything like that. When I was in a previous campaign, it was very much on the Dungeon Master's preference on stuff. And I liked when certain characters would come up and it like the kind of interactions between NPCs and players. I liked all that stuff. I liked seeing that. But then there'd be things about a character that would come up and I'm like, it'd be really cool if he had this, or if he linked into this person's backstory. And I just like, my mind would go completely wild, and I was like, well, what about if those people were having an affair? Like being completely out there. And then I was and I was just thinking, well, if I'm creating these imaginary stories on top of the kind of story I'm already playing, I thought, well, why not just give it a go? And I ran now that I look back on it, a very, very poor 3 to 4 hour session, which was basically just combat. And not that there's anything wrong with combat, but I didn't read the DMG. I was kind of winging it and hoping for the best. And
combat's a tough thing to wing.
Yeah, it really, really is. Like, I had the stat blocks on my phone. It was definitely winging it. But I think from there, I think everybody now knows me as just like the designated DM. Like, if we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, even for one shot, the players won't take over. They'll just like, oh yeah, Owen can do this. Which I really, really, really record. It lets me get a lot of kind of unearthed thoughts, and a lot of kind of like suppressed feelings and emotions out there into like characters and storylines. When I'm laying on the sofa imagining events that have never happened or never will happen, I'm like, well, I can put that actually into effect. So it definitely lets my mind just roam free, and I think that's why I always prefer DMing.
I love that.
That's actually incredible. And as I was hearing you say that, I was like, whoa, I think you actually just gave me a coping mechanism, Ryu, because I do the same. I spend so much of my day just kind of like, daydreaming sometimes, like if I'm doing work and it doesn't require kind of full brain power, if I'm cleaning the kitchen or something. I'm always thinking of like characters and scenarios, and sometimes they're D&D characters and sometimes they're random scenarios, but you've just you've given me the information. They can all be one.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually really cool.
Yeah.
Because I think so many people are afraid of like the negative emotions or the negative storylines, but you can't have triumph without like something to overcome,
Oh yeah, you gotta have contrast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
that's so cool.
definitely feel that I didn't really know this until probably about a year into DMing, that like everyone has had to suffer or deal with a negative experience at some point in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've kind of learned and what I thrive from, not only DMing, but D&D in general, is that those negative experiences don't always have to be 100% negative. Like some of the crazy and bonkers characters and character ideas I've had for my players, whether you ask for like maybe suggestions or like how can I improve this, or just NPCs, or if it's like a simple barkeep, they mainly come from just events that have happened at some point in my life. And it sounds very strange that an event that happened probably about 7 years ago is now an NPC in a Dungeons and Dragons game. But that is what I love. It allows me to have that escape and things that I struggle to let go from,
Mm-hmm.
and things that I really want to keep. Realistically, like memories I want to keep. They're there in my Dungeons and Dragons game for not only for me to experience or let go of, but for my players to kind of see the positive side to that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I love that stuff. So.
That's amazing. It's like it gives you kind of like, for you personally, it gives you kind of this way to like recontextualize these experiences in a way that is
cathartic
for
almost.
sure.
Yeah.
And even fun.
And like it seems so empowering. It's such a beautiful way of, art imitates life, imitates art, and I think that that's incredible. And that's, we were talking a little bit, and we'll get into it, y'all, but we were talking a bit about some of Ryu's characters, and I'm starting to understand where the depth and the love and well, we'll get into it, y'all. But so I guess the big question is, did you expect the amount of work that would go into being a dungeon master?
Absolutely not. I was not prepared, and I learned that the difficult way, kind of touching back on the kind of really weird 4-hour combat session that I had,
Mm-hmm.
which was completely irrelevant. It was just like a one shot that made no sense.
Right.
But I've seen and heard like previous DMs, like they would prep probably like an hour or so before the session, but boy, I didn't think there would be that much like previous to that hour prep. Like for my first campaign that I ran, I think it was about a quarter of I can't remember which one. I think it was Horde of the Dragon Queen, I think it's called.
Okay.
And halfway through that, I realized, hey, look, I could probably do a bit more of this. So during my first campaign, I decided to run pretty much about 70% homebrew.
Okay.
Yeah, you see where this is going. So I would do probably about 3 to 4 hours prep before the session instead of 1.
Oh wow.
Which, to be honest, like is a lot of time in terms of prep, but I loved it. I still love it. Like,
well, it's a chance for you to make those stories. Like you're just building your world a bit.
Yeah, this is a thing. Is one of those things where a lot of people and a lot of dungeon masters that I know will sit down and they will like make notes, and they'll make NPCs like based off like a brainstorm map and all that stuff. But I'll be in the middle of a video game. I'm like, oh, this is an idea. Close down the video game, go make a note of it, come back. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's kind of just like work throughout the week, just like here and there, probably about like half an hour, 45 minutes per day. And then I'll just do like a lump sum before the session just to make sure that everything runs smoothly for the guys, really.
Yeah. It sounds to me almost like you've got these ideas kind of percolating in the back of your mind at all times, right? And it's just there, it's at a low simmer, right? And then every so often when you're, in the midst of whatever, whether it be a game or lying on the sofa or what have you, then it's like that little percolation just slowly bubbles up, and then you get an idea, and it's like, okay, let's capture this down real quick, okay, and then it simmers back down. But it seems like it's always kind of bubbling away in the background.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and I've said this to my fiance, who also is in the D&D group. We'll be watching a TV show, and she'll be like, "Oh, that's really cool." I'm like, that's like something I've written. That's all good. So I can kind of get a feel for how certain people in the group will enjoy things based off of like what they've told me they'd like. Before my second campaign, well, technically my first, I called it the Evervale Bible. Evervale was the name of my world, where it has just a general list of like facts about the world and like what I based the world off of, and they're all like my players' favorite TV shows and video games and comics and all of this stuff. And even though that took probably about a few weeks to put together, like I think that shaped kind of what became this, well, now coming up to 4 years worth of campaign, really. So
oh my goodness.
There's a lot of work that goes behind it, but I think whether or not you put 30 minutes or 30 hours prep into D&D, don't prep for 30 hours. I think you're still going to have a good time DMing. It's all personal preference. One person will say, do it this way. Nah, don't do that.
No.
And the other thing is, I think for some of us, like the D&D bug, it bites and it bites hard. And it's like amazing, but it is definitely one of those things. Like with Arcad and I, there is always an amount of D&D simmering, and it's beautiful. It's wonderful. Like even last night, it's 3 a.m. We're getting ready for bed, and Arcad goes, "All right, so I think I figured out the monk for the book." And it's like, all right, yeah, I'm in the shower, but hit me. I need, like, hit me with it. So describes this whole monk, and it's like, and so, yeah, it's very much drawn on by Pathfinder from Apex Legends. And I was just like,
yes.
It is just, like, it's incredible the places you can pull inspiration from. Like, you're pulling inspiration from first-person shooters and TV and comics, and it's just, like, everyone's different interpretation of what can be done with this medium. It's so incredible. I love it.
And the way to get inspiration from places and from unlikely things. I love it. So we will dig a little bit more. Like, I'm really fascinated by your world. We're gonna dig into that in a little bit. But let's talk about players for a second. Yeah,
because you mentioned that you kind of know, because you know some of your players, and of course, your fiance being one of your players, getting to know kind of what they're going to respond to. That's incredible. So, yeah, for you,
what's sort of the ideal outcome of a session? Like when you do a session with your players, with your fiance, with everyone involved, when the session finishes, and everybody gets up from their computers. I assume it's online.
So we do table sessions.
Oh, you do table? Oh, that's even better.
Yeah.
Oh,
we've always done table sessions.
Oh, you're the first that we get to talk to about that. So that's so exciting. So, okay, even better.
All right, so you're wrapping up. Everyone's sitting around the table. what is going through your mind that it's like, oh, that was awesome?
And what do you want for them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, like if my players have a good session and they can leave whatever troubles that they have outside of D&D at the door, come in, have a good session, experience this life as another person, whether that's through like kind of having fun at a carnival or or shopping or slaying a monster they've been tracking, or even like experiencing like an emotional moment that kind of changes the course of the current like story and the goals that the players may have. As long as my players kind of feel safe before and after the session and they have fun and enjoy the experience and story, that's kind of enough for me.
I mean, that's a great goal. That's a fantastic goal, I would say.
Yeah. Like I think kind of going back to the first ever campaign I played, the only campaign I played, there was a lot of ideas that the DM kind of created, but it didn't fit. It didn't make everyone feel excited. It didn't make everyone feel safe at the table.
Yeah.
And that was just kind of imbalanced kind of what I wanted to do. And all I really wanted to do is just, because everyone at my table, they go through hard stuff like everybody does. And that 4 hours that we play, that is their safe zone. And that's why I will continue doing D&D for as long as they want to play D&D.
That's beautiful.
It's like, even if I struggle during the session, like if I struggle with a voice or I struggle remembering something, I'm quite lucky to have the players I have that will allow me to say, 2 minutes, I'll just look this up. It doesn't happen often, but that allows me to just create this memorable experience that they will have. Emma, my fiance, she still talks about things that happened on like session 1, 2, and 3 of the first campaign.
Oh my goodness.
That's amazing.
And as long as they have a good experience, and like I said, most importantly, they feel safe at the table and they don't feel uncomfortable, that is enough. That is essentially why I do Dungeons and Dragons.
I love that. And I know, so we've been talking a little bit about, how Dungeons and Dragons, it has so much depth and it can be such a cathartic way to experience things and to work through things that maybe might have been something hard that somebody's gone through. And, whenever there is a group of people getting together and trying to essentially improv a story together, of course, you never know exactly what everybody's background is and where they're coming from. And so as a DM, what do you do to keep your players mentally safe when you have hard themes in the campaign?
Of course. So this is a big one. This is probably it's probably going to be the main question for me, realistically. So as I said, the main reason why I started Dungeons and Dragons is because 3 of my friends, 4 of my friends realistically, wanted to give it a go. And 3 of them were suffering quite badly with mental health. And I didn't know what to do. And I was like, I haven't DM'd before, and I didn't know what to do. So the main reason why we met up every week is that I just wanted to create that kind of safe space for them, as I said before, and kind of needed to give them a break from life and like mental health and emotional triggers. It's not for everybody, but for every campaign, I say every campaign, I've done 2 one-shots.
That's still every campaign. Don't talk down to yourself.
No lie was spoken. For everything in every chapter in that campaign, because I split them up into chapters. I go through a taboo list. You can find it online through a Google search. It covers the majority of like potential like uncomfortable situations and triggers and dark themes, and kind of go through like a red, amber, or green status, where I print it off, give it to the player, and I say, hey, look, these are topics that exist in the real world. Just let me know how you feel about this. Don't put your name on it. Or put them on the table. I don't have to know who has dealt with this stuff.
Yeah.
And just so I know really where the line is, and the players already know where my line is, so it's only respectful that I do the same.
Of course. Yeah.
And whenever like any amber marked topic may make an appearance, I just talk to the player or the players as a full, as a group, a few sessions before, to kind of just say, hey, look, this theme may be coming up. If there's anything that makes you uncomfortable, just let me know. Like, even if it's mid-session, just say, hey, look, this is a line, and that's not right. And anything that's marked red is just completely removed. It will never ever make an appearance and will never ever be referenced. The majority of the time, it's kind of just common sense, and just not to put certain subjects in the game. But understanding how your players work, and as long as the players understand how each other's minds work, in terms of like hard themes and whatnot, I think having that kind of mutual like respect on that stuff, it just creates it creates a safe space. I don't think anybody will have to kind of address any issues with that. There's been times where things have been mentioned, and just on the spot, I'm like, hey, look, this is a topic that's been marked off. Just don't mention it, and people are like, okay. And I think that's really good for that taboo list, because there's so many topics. You never know what's really going through someone's head, and just a simple sheet where you don't know who it's come from, you just know not to bring that up.
I love the anonymity and the safety that you give with that, because it's like, especially I would imagine with it being a in-person tabletop experience, like an actual tabletop experience, I imagine so much of feedback and experience is even more instantaneous than like a Discord call, right? Like, even if you have cameras on with Discord, it doesn't quite, like, you don't maybe see the feedback of your words, of your actions, of your story as instantaneously as you might in person.
Well, and like even body language, like, it's such a, for a lot of DMs, I think it seems like it's such common sense, right? Like communication. But I think that the key is, and you've really touched on it here, Ryu, is yes, communication is everything. Communication is going to save you from so much, but typically as the DM, it is kind of up to you to set the stage, to set the tone, and to set the expectations. And so when you have, somebody like yourself, Ryu, who out the gate is creating an atmosphere of, safety, respect, and just giving people the opportunity to feel comfortable, knowing that if they do have those topics, and if they do have something that they need to say, like, it's so easy to say to somebody, tell me if something's a trigger. But to be honest, if there isn't that amount of safety, and if there isn't that amount of trust, it's kind of hard to expect somebody to be able to do that.
Yes.
And so I think the fact that it sounds like you've set it up with just a basis of trust amongst your party and you, I think that's just incredible.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think just respect at the table. It just needs to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think without it, you're probably going to have a rough time. So I expect people, I say expect's a strong word. People show up to my house and let me tell them about this world I've created. And I think it's only fair that I say, hey, look, you're coming here once a week and giving me 4 hours of your time. Like, it's my responsibility to make them safe. So
exactly. And understanding that responsibility, I think, is a huge part of just creating the whole experience, because that's really what it is. Like, D&D is an all-encompassing experience. It's visual, it's auditory, it's mental, it's everything. And
And it's emotional.
And it's
like, that's
very
the other
emotional.
thing, that's the thing, like, folks, some people are so afraid of emotions, and it's like emotions are the condiments of storytelling.
Yes.
Like,
well
you don't
put.
thank you. You don't want to just, well, some folks do, and no shade to them, but for me, when I'm going to get hot wings, I want to see 55 flavors. I want to be able to experience it, I want the toppings, I want the sauce, and emotions are the sauce.
Emotions are the sauce. All right, and we're going to shift gears. Are you ready for the best mini game around?
I can certainly try.
We believe in you, Ryu. We believe. So
it's time for Explain It in an Elevator. Arcad, take it away.
Here's how this mini game is going to work. You are going to have 1 minute to explain your campaign, and it can be your current one, your most recent one, whichever one you prefer, to a stranger who has never heard of D&D. The more detail you can cram in, the better. And try and basically just fit as much as you can, as much detail as possible inside of that minute, and you will hear the timer go off when the time is over. Are you ready to play the game, Ryudowski?
I'm gonna give this a go.
All right. We believe in you.
Mm-hmm.
And I will give you a countdown, and then you're going to jump right in. Okay? You ready?
Okay. Yeah, let's go.
3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so right, here we go. So at the end of my first and previous campaign, I DM'd a colossal infernal realm devouring machine was built using magical artifacts that completely annihilated existence as they knew it, causing the end of the first campaign. Dealing with the aftermath of that is my current campaign in my homebrew world of Evervale, a mythical, semi-gothic, mysterious world full of lore and secrets and emotional stuff. Where the world is dealing kind of with the aftermath of that cataclysm, kind of rebuilding cities and civilization and order. What the people soon learn is that the gods no longer exist, kind of shifting faith and hoping the gods to fall, really, to kind of several guilds instead of churches and bandits and priests. And that, like, it's chaos everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere.
Holy, that sounds crazy.
That was amazing.
There's a lot.
I'm walking out of that elevator and I'm going, that sounds like the coolest movie ever. Where do I watch it?
Yeah, no kidding. I want to see the full motion picture.
Yeah, me too.
We can take the elevator back up. It's all good. We can carry on.
Well, I mean, we were going to ask you, like, one of the things we love to check in with is, like a DM's dream campaign in terms of, length, progression, story, and party. But you want to know what? I think you've already told us. Like, you've been building it. You're in it.
Yeah. So just tell us about your world, Ryu.
Tell us about your world. This is
no timer. Just tell us everything.
Talk about it.
So when we got to the end of campaign 1, it was very. It's basically a 2-year prelude for the second one, and the guy said, like, it was really, really good fun, and they had all the stuff that they really, really enjoyed, but they wanted the more kind of like semi-gothic, kind of Dark Souls, Bloodborne kind of feel to it. And I said, you should not have told me that. So that's kind of how I kind of base off of. Like, there's a few kind of, after they said, like, hey, look, this is what we like, I made a list of the top 3 things that everybody likes. And it's based off, like, Game of Thrones, Tokyo Ghoul, X-Men, Last of Us, Diablo, Dead by Daylight, Witcher, all of that stuff. So it's all of those kind of ideas and feelings and atmospheres kind of combined into one. And it's got the storytelling of stuff like Witcher, mixed with like the goriness of stuff like I would say probably stuff like Stranger Things. Like, it's got that kind of like H.P. Lovecraftian kind of feel to it, where it's not just here's a little bit of RP, here's a little bit of combat. It is, if you want to find something out, you are going to have to become part-time investigators, and kind of like through laws and like tales through books that they find in the game, they've basically found out that apart from like that 1 minute that I described before, it's rumored that beyond the seas of Evervale, kind of surrounding the lands, is like a mystical, like dark veil, almost like a dome containing whatever happens in this kind of reality of Evervale stays there. And kind of whoever sets out to explore to get the answers to these tales and like rumors and whatnot almost never return. Those who do are kind of like mentally broken and kind of go beyond insane. The whole world and its existence realistically is a puzzle at this point. It's definitely like a brain twister, but literally every answer that they all want and that you want to discover is there. It's all written into all the cities and like books and whatnot. It's all waiting there for them to discover, either in plain sight or behind a veil, so to speak. So
that's marvelous.
There's a lot of lore, and it is very much they could get to the end of the campaign and not find some of it. And I think playing with the group +1 of my previous campaign, they've heard certain references to certain people of like a previous life, or even some on this current kind of plane of existence, which happened to be some of their characters from the previous campaign.
Oh my gosh!
Wow.
Yeah, so they've heard a lot of stuff, and they passed one walking down just a generic path going to another city, but they were in like a almost like a like a group, like a bandwagon of people. Like, I'm not sure what the word is. And they addressed her, and she communicated telepathically with one of them, and didn't find out until probably about 6 or 7 sessions later that it was actually one of their previous characters.
Wow, what a payoff.
So there was like, oh, she's alive, she's alive.
I love that.
So yeah, there's a lot of connections, and the guys love story. They absolutely adore it.
Well, thank goodness, because honestly, it sounds like truly, Ryu, like your world and the first campaign and the second campaign, it has better writing than some full-fledged TV series that have made it onto streaming services. Like, and so I've got to know, when you started your first campaign, did you know that it was a prelude to your next one? Or was it sort of you were running your first campaign and then you got feedback from your players and you thought to yourself, oh, I have a perfect way to like seamlessly meld these two things into the most epic tale of all time? Was it planned? Was it on the fly?
Yeah, it's kind of like a mixture of both. Like when I first started, it was very... we ran Lost Mines of Fandelver, I think it's called. That was very by the book, and it was straight to the point, no homebrew. It was just how it is. We then got into Horde of the Dragon Queen, and that's when people felt a lot more comfortable role-playing the characters and voicing the characters, and physically, like creating hand gestures when they speak. So when they kind of got to that point, I was thinking, well, my main goal is to create a safe place for them, but I want them to hold that memory. And I was thinking, like, well, I know parts of their backstory that they don't know because they have to discover it. And I was thinking, well, if they don't discover this, I spent a long time writing this. Like, I'm not going to let that go. So I can speak about this openly now, thankfully after, not last session, the session before, is Emma, my fiance, she, her character had a brother that she was never told about for many of reasons. And they've actually met and worked alongside him in the second campaign. So that fully fledged character that was built in campaign 1 that was never met, I was like, well, I'm not going to let this guy go. So I was like, well, I can just carry this over and create this like super cool experience for them. Not just for Emma, but for everybody at the table. And you know, like it definitely started off. I definitely didn't start with that intent. I definitely started with the intent of creating loads of memories for them. But probably about 4, maybe 5 months in, I think that's when I started getting the hang of it. And you know, the guys would say to me like after the session, and they'd be like, "Oh, this is really, really cool. You know, like, is this gonna happen?" I'm like, I still can't tell you. They still say that now, and it's been like 3 and a bit years. I'm like, I still can't tell you.
Oh my goodness.
Or they'll say, "Oh, would it be really cool if this happened?" I'm like, yes, it would.
That's
and
wild.
Stuff that they've told me like 2 to 3 years ago, I've made note of, and they've now discovered.
My goodness. And that must be so exciting for you as a storyteller and as a world creator, because it's like, you know, taking your Emma's character's brother as an example, you know, you obviously created them so, like, frankly, years before they came into play. So I imagine over that time you had so much ability and capability to really refine the character, really figure out what their wants are, what their needs are, what their flaws and strengths and all of this is. And so then I imagine when you finally get to deliver that character during a campaign, it must feel like the greatest payoff in the world for you.
Yeah, it is a massive payoff, but it comes with a lot of frustration. Like the knowing that they'll be super excited about it, but they'll know about it in probably about a year is it's difficult.
It is.
But when it does pay off, it pays off really, really well.
Oh, I can imagine.
It's really kind of, when my players' eyes kind of glow up, like, oh, I know what's going on. I'm like, yes, this is the moment I've been waiting for. So.
Oh, that's so fantastic. And now this is something that I'm really curious about because of the length and the interconnectivity of your campaigns that you've been DMing. What sort of like, well, first of all, actually, let's start with the basics. What level range did you sort of start and end with over the span of these campaigns? And as a follow-up to that, what sort of level range, like, you know, to sort of shift gears into the mechanics of the game for a moment, what kind of level range do you feel is the most fun, the most expressive? Where did your players have the most fun? Where did you have the most fun? Kind of wrap all of that up into one little package and kind of give us your thoughts.
Of course, yeah. So my first campaign, we started off at level 1, just so it is an easier transition for all of us. So we can just have this very raw character and build up from that. That worked out really well. Campaign 2, we started from level 3 because who they're playing and how their characters have lived before the moments of this campaign. They're very much experienced to a certain state. But my probably favorite level to play and DM is probably from like level 6 onwards.
Oh, okay.
I don't really know why. I think it just feels like when you're playing a video game and you're waiting for that like one skill point that you've been waiting for, and your character just gets that juicy upgrade you've been waiting for, and you finally get this build together, and you're starting to feel like powerful, and you can go back to that boss battle and beat him like much more easier than you've tried before.
Yeah.
I think level 6 kind of does that for like the characters that I've played, and I know that because my guys at the moment are level 5. And they're itching for the next level. So I can't wait for that. But no, level 6 and probably level 11 are probably like spikes in character progression. And I think that's probably when I've seen my guys get the most excited. I think that's kind of just where it's set.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, there's so many classes and so many characters where they really, they kind of come into their own at those level ranges, like at that power, that level 6 spike. Kind of to use your analogy of it being like a video game, it's like, I agree. I think like that level range is kind of where you have enough power that you don't feel like the helpless little waif who might go down to a single unfortunate crit in a fight. But you also know that there's a long road ahead of strength to go, which is exciting. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also want to touch on how I like the idea of starting at level 3, because I think, level 1, it's like you're basically like, you're a child with a sword, like who knows what will happen.
You're squishy.
You're squishy, but it's like level 3 is where so many subclasses come into play. It's where a lot of like detail can go in, and I just think that's marvelous. And just so out of curiosity, in the Prelude campaign, if we can use that term for it, how high level did characters get before it ended?
Level 20.
Oh, you went all the way to 20. Wow.
Amazing.
All the way to level 20. So from level 18 to 20, it was the progression was sped up. Might be 17 to 20. It was sped up quite a bit, just due to the events that were happening.
Yeah.
Because I used milestones. So so going up to level 20, they didn't last very long at level 20 because what was happening was going to happen whether they turned back or not. But yeah, having the campaign going all the way up to level 20 was really, really cool. But I don't necessarily think a campaign has to end that way.
No, right. There's room for it, and I think those very last couple of levels, in some cases, they make an enormous difference. In some cases, it's very like flavorful, right? Like I think of oh gosh, is it the Druid when they hit level 20? They then age at like 1/10 the normal rate or something, which is great and very, very cool for flavor, but it doesn't really come into play very much in a campaign. That's more like epilogue stuff.
Yeah. And I think if you get past level 11, the character's very, very good to look back on in terms of story. Because you get a lot of flavor. Taking the rogue, for example. I'm not going to use my favorite class for example or anything. But like level 9, for example, and even level 13, like creating false identities and mimicking other people's speech.
Yeah.
Is that gonna enhance how your character works in like combat? No, probably not. But is it going to create memorable experiences? Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And I think anywhere, I say level 11 as an example, but
it differs a bit depending on class.
Yeah, it differs per class, but I think level 11 is kind of the key point. I could probably play a campaign up until level 11 and then stop. Because I think everything after that tends to be flavor.
Yeah, I could see that. And with all these cool characters in mind and all of that, what would you say is like the weirdest one or the most memorable one? And I know, your players are listening, so you may need to. This is the time where Ryu picks favorites. Are you ready? No, hit us. So what sort of stood out to you?
So I kind of touched on like I'll kind of go through all 4 characters on my first campaign.
Oh, I love that.
I think the second campaign they're still developing and whatnot. But the first campaign, there's an NPC that drove my players absolutely insane with happiness. But I had a dwarf blood hunter, which was this very burly, very muscly, manly man dwarf. But he was probably the biggest queen of his beard. And you could say anything to him, but if you touch that beard, probably gonna take a hit.
Oh no.
And we had a Emma's character who started off as a warlock, started off as a sorcerer, sorry, and turned fully warlock due to kind of story events. She went from this very bubbly character that everybody was really happy to be around to this very dark demeanor character, which was a very weird shift.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was they were very interesting to kind of see and kind of watch grow. But the NPC that they all love was it was and still is my player's favorite NPC and probably is still mine. He was completely mental. And he was based off just a normal human dude from Storm King's Thunder, I think he's from, called Ryudowski. I think. Yeah, Ryudowski.
Okay.
And I saw my previous DM put like a little tiny flair on him that kind of made him a bit more exciting. Not that I knew at the time he wasn't supposed to be this kind of flamboyant.
Yeah.
But I blew that idea up completely. Where he would, in the middle of a conversation, I would, as a DM, get like a stack of paper, and imitate him as a person, where he would write random words on a piece of paper while speaking about a completely different subject, screw them up and throw them in the air. Being fully convinced that he was not only like the god of the land, but he was the land and everything that came with it.
Oh my.
He had like a random rabbit named Bernard that would just do absolutely nothing. We would do nothing. He would sit in Ryudowski's hands, or he would be in his little little side pocket, and he would do nothing. But my players were and still are so sure he had a major part to play in the campaign. This little rabbit named Bernard. Spoiler alert, guys. He was just a rabbit.
Or was he?
Or was he? I might be trying to throw you off here.
Exactly. The double blind.
He might be the BBG for campaign 2. But Ryudowski had this very high and crazy voice that as soon as a single word was said would just set the players off every time. Just doing completely bonkers stuff, like pretending to be a tree, like just T-posing, just pretending to be a tree. And that was his stealth roll. Even if he got a natural 1, even if he got a natural 20, that was his stealth.
That was his interpretation. He's like,
Yeah.
I'm part of the land. I am the land. I love it.
Yeah, it's essentially. And when they were speaking about Tresenda Manor, they were saying, hey, look, go to Tresenda Manor, we'll do this. He'd be like, well, man or what? Man or woman? He just did not understand the general concept of words. But he's a very smart guy. So, yeah, he was absolutely bonkers. He was definitely the weirdest and craziest thing that I've created yet, I think. Crazy in terms of mentally.
Of course.
Yeah, but yeah, the guys loved him, and I had an old friend. Saying that, in terms of characters, I had an old friend who wanted to create a true polymorphed version of a chair. So he was a chair in a past life, and I was like, that's not happening. Yeah, it was.
That's beautiful.
It was what I think his name was. Barstuel.
Oh my god.
it was a beautiful creation we came up with, but it just didn't happen. It was never happening.
Fair enough.
But yeah, Radolf was great. He's a very intellectual guy, which just had so much understanding of how language worked, but would also make you feel like an idiot for actually using that language.
He operated on a different kind of plane of existence.
Yeah, he was on a different frequency, and
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I guess besides sentient bar stools, what are your hard no's for character creation? And are there any classes or subclasses that have broken your game?
it depends. There isn't any direct big no's. I'm always happy to kind of work with my table to kind of make what they want to work.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't exist, I will find a way to make it exist. One of my current players wanted to play a Siren-esque character, and I was like, "There's no Siren class, but if we look at the Bard, for example, there's definitely a way to make that work."
Oh yeah.
So I'm happy to kind of like take on like these ideas and kind of try and make them work. However, I love homebrew and all that stuff, but the amount of times that some of my previous like kind of temporary players have come up to me like with a feat that they've seen on like D&D Wiki.
Oh no.
That is, yeah, that's number one rule. We don't use D&D Wiki. With this feat that is just completely ridiculous, and they claim for it not to be broken, but it gives their barbarian character like 8 billion attacks. It is real. Yeah, I'm a bit with like unearthed arcana stuff, because either very, very good or just rubbish, really.
Mm-hmm.
But no, there's not going to be anything that I'm never going to say no to. For example, one of my players at the moment, his entire character is based off of a sentient tree. So
Beautiful.
he was like, "How do I make this work?" And you know, I consider myself to have a little bit of knowledge about Greek mythology and that kind of stuff. And I said, "Well, have you heard of Ymir from like Greek mythology? Have you played any of the God of War games, anything like that?" So no. And I said, "Hey, look at this." He was like, "That's what we're gonna do."
That's it right there.
So yeah, if my guys have an idea, we'll go for it. And if it doesn't work, we can just shift it around a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, like another player of mine is a massive fan of the anime Tokyo Ghoul. And he really, really wanted to play a ghoul from that. And I was like, it doesn't exist, but let's make it.
Yeah.
I was like, I will make you an entire class. Like, I don't care.
I love that.
I made that, and it is really good.
And I imagine that helps so much when you're going into it with not only an open mind, but also a willingness to help them create it. Partially because, you know, for one, it fosters again a better sense of the relationship with the players, but also then you can help kind of make sure that it fits into the world so that you don't run into problems down the road.
Yeah, and I think it's a way for, you know, I ask my players, I ask my group table to come to me and say, if you have any ideas about your character, like, even if it's nothing to do with right now, just say. Like, if you, as part of your backstory, if you haven't written a certain thing about like a blacksmith that you've once met, but you want to maybe dip into like a blacksmith profession,
mm-hmm.
then yeah, just tell me about it, and we can like work it out. And I think not having that kind of strict kind of structure on that, I think it allows them to feel a lot more comfortable. Yeah, so again, like if someone said to me they wanted to play a dragon seducing bard, I would say it wouldn't really make sense in this campaign, but what you could probably do is this.
Yeah, it's sort of the it's either the yes and or the no but.
Yeah, essentially is if something just won't work, because I've always considered my campaigns to be very serious and story driven.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way that, you know, the table likes it. Well, as far as they told me anyway. So stuff like Barst duels and dragons seducing bards, they just don't really work. And I would say to them, hey, look, this isn't going to fit this campaign. Let's look at another idea.
Exactly. Because you're looking out for them. You want them to have fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want them to not have the idea that they want. But I will find a way for it to work in a sensible way for everybody to have fun at the table.
Exactly. Because it's very easy to come up with these like fun ideas, but maybe they're maybe the idea in its original state is a bit of a shallow pool, and so you can only get so deep on that initial idea, and so you're kind of like workshopping it with them to make it feel a little bit, to give it depth, or at least room to have depth. Yeah. And so now this next question, I am absolutely fascinated because again, you're the first DM we've spoken with who has in-person sessions. And so I'm really, really interested in this. But with having all these people at the table, right, and you all sat down, how do you feel that conflicts, disagreements, and generally like issues that come up between players should be handled? How have you handled them in the past? Have there been any that have kind of like really exploded? Like, kind of just give us your take on that.
So yeah, during the first campaign, there was a few character changes where people would say that they wanted to play, and like maybe 4 or 5 weeks down the line, they would something would come up. It happens. But we got to a point where we had a very solidified party, and I got one of the old people who used to play in again. What I didn't consider, and this is partially my fault as a dungeon master, is I didn't consider at this point that these people would not get along. They have a very, very different view on Dungeons and Dragons and how it should work and what the fun factor is. And there was a lot of tension at the table and like out of character comments, which I then had to step in and say, hey, look, this isn't fun. Like, no one's finding this fun.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the answer to that is privately. Any conflict or disagreements between players either just need to be sorted between themselves, or if they require a DM, get them into a group chat, go over to each other's houses, sort this issue, and be done with it. Just never leave that problem at the table. Never bring it to the table.
Yeah.
If the problem is during sessions, just bringing everyone to a neutral level on the Dungeon Master side and between them, and then usually finding like a middle ground for now, and then addressing it later, is how I've done it. If 2 people don't agree on something, just sort it out. Like, there's a reason why this table is, in my instance, a safe space for the players, but for people who play it just for fun, just for an escape, or just because they like D&D.
Yeah.
Not 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, whoever. They can't ruin the experience for the other people, and that's something I will stand by. Is if they need my input, I will have my input. But if you're going to be playing Dungeons and Dragons with a group of people who are taking time out of their day, you don't get to ruin that, and you need to solve that by yourselves. Or if you need the Dungeon Master's help to do that, then the Dungeon Master should be asked and should be able to help with that, because that's kind of your responsibility.
Exactly. Yeah. As Prime mentioned earlier, it's like you're all playing. You are all players in your own way. The DM plays a pretty different game than the players do, but it's still, nevertheless, you're at the table, you're having fun too. But you are kind of, you have that role of needing to be like the moderator, the voice of reason, the voice of community, and I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
I love that.
I think as a dungeon master, you have a lot of responsibility, and I think as the DM, in situations like that, you're not just the dungeon master, but almost an overseer of the entire table.
Yes.
And the players at that, like at the end of the day, if there's an issue at the table, the players are not going to have a good experience. They're not going to feel comfortable. And therefore, probably not going to want to continue playing. And without your players, dungeon masters, you are nothing. So
absolutely.
Ain't that the truth?
You really do have to play sort of mediator, storyteller, and all of that as well. And so I guess, so that's how it happens at the table. But for your campaigns, do you have PvP? And if so, what are your thoughts on it? And if not, what are your thoughts on player versus player?
So like I get like the I don't think PvP should really be used as a normal campaign. Really, that's just personal preference. Where I don't personally use it, nor do I really think it kind of fits with 5th edition. For the campaign to kind of and the party to kind of really grow as people and as characters and a party, I do think there should be some disagreements. And even though it's not PvP on a large scale, like even 2 characters dueling or practicing magic with each other is a really, really cool concept, and it helps characters grow. Do I think it should be character fights to the death? No. I think people can speak about their issues and kind of get around it that way.
Yeah.
That aside, I adore like battle royales, stuff like old campaign versus new campaign characters, or splitting the group into 2 or to 3, and playing little game modes like capture the flag or attack and defend between teams is super, super fun. I enjoy it. The players enjoy it. As one shots, obviously, not during the game.
No, of course. It's like you just
yeah,
you've got like a downtime football match between the players.
Yeah, and it's like stuff like when my table entered a fight pit. They 2 of the characters decided to have a brawl, and I think that is personally okay. That's their characters, and even out of character, just like having fun with the experience. But I don't think, as I said before, I don't think the whole I'm going to stab this person and I'm going to stab this person and then he's going to die and I am going to go off and be a big bad evil person. Nah, I don't get that, and I don't think I don't really think it fits in with a normal campaign anyway.
No. Like it would need to be something like very carefully orchestrated for that to work at all. And even then the players would need to be really unified in what they're trying to accomplish in that way, even though it would be combative, kind of a bit of a dichotomy there, but I in terms of like keeping secrets from each other and stuff like that's cool. But in terms of even stuff like betrayal, like that is a real life thing, and it can happen in D&D. But if you're in the middle of a dungeon and you just decide to, you're a gunslinger and you want to, pop a few rounds at your party, it just makes no sense for me. Yeah, no, it's one of those things that's just a little. If there's a place for it, it's got to be very, very carefully orchestrated, for sure.
Yeah, there's a place and a time, and you kind of have to be aware of that.
Definitely. So now, as someone this is an interesting thing because from what you've told us, you've been in the game for a while now. You've been at this for a few years. First off, just as a real quick one-off, do you consider yourself an experienced TTRPGer at this stage?
I know there's people that are more experienced than me, but I think that's going to be the case with anything. I would say I'm experienced because I've DM'd, I've played, and I think you can't really do anything more than that.
Yeah.
I've classed myself as experienced to a certain level.
All right. So with all of your experience, what would you sort of recommend, for new players? And we get this question actually a lot during Twitch streams, where people will talk about how they want to get into D&D, but they're scared, or they've tried to join a campaign and it was really bad experience. So what would you sort of give as advice and tell new players to be mindful of when they're looking to join either a game, the community at large, or just anything like that?
Of course, yeah. So I think with the community, I think in my experience anyway, you'll pretty much always be welcome. I think with any community, there's always going to be that odd egg here and there that is just like super rules lawyer. But I think the first piece of advice I'd give when you're joining a game is if you join a D&D party and it doesn't work out, that's okay. Try again. You'll get there. Many people have told me that they've had like a negative experience with D&D at some point, as you mentioned, where another player or like a DM has ruined like a particular experience for them, or it's like a certain like cinematic moment. It happens. Like, not every party is going to run the same way. What that kind of leads to is my second point is that if you don't enjoy something, just let your DM know, as you should, like when you really enjoy something as well, like like a simple I really enjoyed when this happened and they did this and my character really got this kind of like burst of happiness because of it. It really goes a long way, and it kind of like lets your DM know and like helps your DM know like what and how you enjoy certain like moments and storytelling. D&D is a fun, like mind-blowing experience and adventure. Have fun with it. Whether your character is a human fighter or a tiefling sorcerer, be weird, be wonderful. Just let your mind go absolutely nuts with it. And if you have a bad experience, just like anything else, just get up and give it another go, because even if people say, I don't think D&D is for me, I don't want to play D&D, they are liars. I think D&D is a game for everybody to enjoy, or it's an experience for everybody to enjoy, and for some, a lifestyle that people can enjoy.
Oh, yeah.
And I think if you want to dig deep into it, it is completely endless, and the stories that can be told to you, and the stories that you can experience, and the characters you can create. There's a limit on races and classes and backgrounds, but there's no limit on the story. The stories and the kind of enjoyment and all these experiences that you can kind of go through. So if you do have a negative experience, find a new party, find one online. Talk to another friend, DM your own. It's scary at first, but just go for it.
I love that, and I really love the advice. Be weird, be wonderful. I think those are words to live by.
Yeah, I stick with that on a daily basis.
Definitely. Well, and it reflects well, I think, in life and in games and in a bit of everything, really. So. Yeah. If we were to condense kind of this whole conversation down, and this is probably a very challenging kind of question to answer, but what is it like when you were first, I think you said it was coworkers who brought you into that first campaign?
Yeah.
What is it about D&D and DMing that has just grabbed your heart, grabbed your soul, and just never let go? What is it about it, if you could distill it down to its truest essence?
Yeah, I think again it comes in two parts, and one's a bit of a personal part, but I'm happy to share it. First part is like my mind is a puzzling and scrambled yet like exciting mess of like emotion, thoughts, ideas that are trapped there. They're screaming to get out. There's like personalities and people, and there's so many thought processes that are there that they just want to get out, and being able to put parts of that into personas such as characters that I play, or as a DM, as a shopkeeper or a goblin or a dragon or like a random NPC is wild and it's exciting. But what's super cool is that some of those places in my brain, like I said previously, is some of those places in my brain I don't like it. So it feels like I'm almost removing those thoughts and removing them from my brain onto paper, and into a positive experience. What's even cooler is my players like these characters and they like these experiences that I'm making with these thoughts, and it teaches me, and what hopefully other DMs and players will realize is that even though your mind may be a very scary place sometimes, it's not always as bad as your mind tricks you to be. And if you can figure out a way to twist a dark thought into a wimpy goblin and watches your party completely demolishes them, it's super cool. It's super cool. And you know, when I first started D&D, it was a fun experience. It was a really fun experience. It was a learning curve. I got hold of it really quickly, which I'm quite lucky. But my mind was not in the best of places. I was in a very dark place, and even when I've been DMing campaign 1 and 2, there's been dark periods in my life, and being able to kind of bring those thoughts out, sit with 4 of my friends that are genuinely excited to see what I am doing in life, and what I'm bringing to the table, literally speaking. And then after every session, them saying, even if it's that was a really good session, or oh my god, that was an amazing session, oh, why do you have to end here? You know, I've had times where they've all sat at the table like, that's not the end. Like, we're not leaving. And we've done and they've been sat there for about half an hour. I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're doing another hour or so then. And I think just the amount of love that I get to give out, and the amount of love that gets given to me, even in these like kind of emotional moments during D&D, and you know, even when they get to go to a carnival that I mentioned before, and they get to go into a human cannibal and roll checks to see how far they go and if they land in the net, and how much damage they take if they fail, which they definitely did on 2 nat 1s.
Oh, Ralph.
No.
Ralph.
Those moments create such a happy place and a safe place for me. And I get to look back on these experiences and these memories that I maybe don't have as, you know, real life Owen, real life Ryudowski. And I get to look back and think, well, with my 4 friends, we've been down under a mountain, traveled about 30,000 feet into a dragon's lair where we met a baby version of Tiamat, and watching my 4 friends as characters work together to figure out how they're going to take this Tiamat down is mind-blowing, because I know that full well when I'm 60, and you know, I don't know where I'll be when I'm 60, but you know, using the kind of traditional kind of movie moment of sitting on your front porch in like a little rocking chair, I know full well that I'm not going to look back on the days where, you know, some of the people that I know on weekends go clubbing, or they will, they'll play video games, or they'll do something. Full well that I'm going to remember the time that I got to witness a 5-headed dragon being slain, and you know, the character that I mentioned earlier that was very much a full guard of his beard. Yes. Watching that being singed in his sleep, that will be in my brain forever. And looking back on that makes me so genuinely happy. It makes me so proud of my players to come from this, like, who've never ever kind of played D&D before, and I've got players who suffer from anxiety, depression, separation anxiety, everything. Not everything, but
but yeah.
But a lot of a lot of mental health. I'll call them illnesses, as people call them.
Sure. Yeah.
I like to call them quirks, but seeing them go from, I'll use one of my players as an example, this very dark place that he was in, to then playing a rogue who quite literally scaled up an entire mountain just to get one dagger hook, one dagger stab into a creature that he just really, 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 really just wanted to have his moment with that.
And you were able to give it to him. And
yeah, this is the thing. I think seeing them progress and seeing them not only as characters, through levels and experiences and stuff like that, but as people, I couldn't be any more proud of the people that they have become, and who they are becoming through D&D and through other experiences. And I think that is watching them and the stuff that they do with my creations, I think that is essentially what has kept me passionate about it for so long.
And what's going to keep you passionate going forward?
Yeah.
This
is this thing, and what's kind of captured my interest on it. Well, it was literally just seeing a session one day. I was like, "Oh, that's cool."
Well, and one of the things that you keep saying that has really stuck in my mind is you keep describing, these things that you've seen, seeing your party do this, seeing your party delve into the mines, being 60, sitting on that porch, seeing all these memories, because it's like, even though it's in our imaginations, even though it's something that is, we're making believe, we're make believe, it's real. The things that have happened are real. And you can see them in your mind, you can envision them, you remember them vividly in some cases. And I think it's a special kind of magic, that TTRPGs have. Yeah,
I think towards the start, when I was playing in the campaign, it was very my character does this, or by their name does this. And what they will do is this. And then when I created my campaign, probably about a month in, it wasn't long at all. It changed to, what I'm going to do is this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go over here, and what I'm going to say is this. Or sometimes it wouldn't even be that. It will just be, I'm going to walk over to this and blah, 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 blah. And seeing them kind of become this person that they've created, and be so in depth. Like two of my players at the moment, they've created journals for the characters, where they write down what they're going through, and they have pictures of the NPCs and what they think, what they think they are, and what they've been doing, if they're a good character. But if it's not necessarily bad, but one they're not overly fond of, they'll have a little connection tree of who they might be connected to, and that level of in depth. They've done that over something I've created. I'm not going to get that anywhere else.
No,
that's so true.
It is so very true.
It blows my mind how far my players have come. They're great.
I love that. That is, that's incredible. And it is so true. Like, where else do you get that? Like, Arcad and I, we have this whole idea where we actually want to take the map that was created for our campaign and we want to turn it into wallpaper and have a full wall in our house be the map. And then on that, we want to hang commissions of our characters throughout the campaign. Right?
That'd
Like,
be so cool.
and it's like, but what else can inspire that? Like, these are characters, we made these characters and Asterix makes the world. And it's like, what other medium do you get where you get that level of creativity and involvement and attachment and just investment with your friends? Like, it's so rare. And I think it comes back to, even the mini game where you were describing your campaign in an elevator. Like, I very much try and put myself for that portion of the podcast, I very much try and put myself in the mind of somebody who's never heard of D&D. And so from the takeaway today, I'm getting out of that elevator and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just met a screenplay writer. Like, I just met a director. I just met, like, oh, what does he does something that creates, like, you know what I mean? Like, dungeon masters are writers. They're timeline creators. They're historians.
They're improv actors.
Yeah, they're like, it's an incredible medium. It really, really is.
It really is. Yeah.
I think it's kind of two things to take away from that, really, is obviously with that wallpaper idea, please do.
Right.
Secondly is after the first session, like after the session zeros and all that stuff, of my second campaign, the one that currently playing, my players actually got the map that I created, printed out on a giant canvas, which is now on my wall. So it's if you can do it, because I walk downstairs every day, I sit, I'm like, I did that.
I love that. Yes.
I'm so excited for when we can.
It's happening.
Yeah.
It's 100% happening.
Oh yeah.
It is really cool. It's mind blowing.
Beautiful. And so now it's time for the DM alignment personality quiz. So earlier, wink.
Forget.
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. I bet. So hit us with the one, or if there's two, hit us with the one that you kind of feel closest first, and I will read you what it says about you.
I have two.
Okay.
And the first one I'll go for is I'll let you roll for it.
All right, beautiful. I'll let you roll for it. Da-da, scrolling down.
I love this segment.
It's a pretty good segment. It truly is. Now, let's see. Now, you're hoping for lawful good.
Anything good at this point. Like, I'll take chaotic good. As long as it has good in it.
All right, I hope we get there. I believe. So, you can't just have it, but I'll let you roll for it. Now, keep in mind, this is one of two, so it's all right. It might balance out. This is true neutral. And
I'll take it.
Right? The description. Neutral is a hard balance to strike. It's not perfection, as everyone's technique is personal. Perfect is what's right for you. But a neutral DM finds a path between permissive, strict, threat, and reward that usually appeals to everyone. The generalized approach draws from tips and tricks from lots of practice and playing multiple systems across a long gaming history.
There you go.
I might be too neutral. I've changed my mind.
Well, what's the other one that resonated with you?
Let's try something new.
Let's try something new. Chaotic good.
It's got good in it. That's what that matters.
It's perfect. True neutral and chaotic good. Chaotic good DMs experiment and toy with the gaming system, perhaps even going so far as to produce their own, go off the books altogether, or evenly throw seemingly unrelated games like Dark Souls or poker to change the pace. So long as everyone is enjoying themselves and the story is good, the rules can take a back seat. I think that's a great combination.
I think that's a perfect combination. That's you.
Oh, that's beautiful. I
wholeheartedly agree with that.
Ryudowski, the chaotic good, true neutral DM. Everyone, make notes. make notes for wanting an exceptional DM. That seems to be the sweet spot for now.
For now. Yeah.
I love that. And so now, listeners, we have a question for you. It came to me over the course of the podcast, listening to this incredible adventure that's developed from truly, I feel it was kind of your first introduction was, oh, what's that? Oh, that sounds fun. I'd like to do it. And now it's evolved to this incredible passion that I think for a lot of us who get into D&D, it does become like kind of integral to us, right? Yeah. Like, I just think that's beautiful. And so listeners, we want to know what got you into your first campaign. And if you haven't started your first campaign yet, what got you wanting to join one?
Yeah.
Let us know. Let us know in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, drop a comment. If you're listening to this on any of the various podcast players, check out our YouTube.
Yeah. Or send us a tweet, send us an email, a Discord message. Like, let us know.
Absolutely. And so now we're going to pass it off to you, Ryu. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for giving us an insight into this incredible world, these wonderful creators, and the amazing players that you have helping you sculpt and drive this story forward. And so shout us out, my friend. What have you got going on? Where can we find you? Yeah, let us know. Let us know where we can get more Ryu.
Well, thank you. Well, firstly, thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun. It's definitely been a new experience. So again, yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
It's been our pleasure.
If you ever need me again, you know I'm here. You can find me at. So you can what I'm most commonly known for is on Twitch. You can find me at twitch.tv/Ryudowski. Same on Twitter and Instagram and all that good stuff. Where you can also find me is on Instagram, where you can find me at Beyond Owen, which is my very, 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 very new photography project.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah, where I dig deep into more like stories and the almost the dark side of like behind the camera, where you'll see a lot of like models and all of this stuff, where you will generally see happiness in photos. There is a persona. There's definitely something there that portrays an emotion that one image shows you. But what I want to show in this kind of Beyond Owen project is, whether or not you have like a skin condition like vitiligo, and what a lot of photographers will blend that and they'll edit it out. What I specialize in and what I will hope to grow in is making that the main point is, hey, look, it's okay to be different. It's okay to look different. It's okay to act different. It's okay to be weird. It's okay to be wonderful, as I know Arcad loves. So yeah, you can find me at Beyond Owen at that project. And there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up on Twitch as well. Which, like I said, you can find me at twitch.tv/Ryudowski, which you can send me DMs about Dungeons and Dragons. You can send me a DM just to say hello. You can send me pretty much anything that's within the correct terms and conditions. So
there you go.
I love that, and I've actually just followed your Instagram right now. I love the basis of that project, and I think it's so important. I mean, I spent most of my early 20s living in New York City, and I was very involved in the fashion world, and actually one of my collaborators I was very, very lucky to work with, the whole idea was we would do runway brunches every week, but our entire thought process behind it was to work with, our tagline was, it was completely inclusionary, right? Like all ages, shapes, sizes, persuasions, ethnicities. And it was incredible because, you know, Fashion Week comes and you go to, you know, the same show 6 times in a row, right? It's all the same facial expression. It's all the same body type. It's all, you know, very cookie cutter. And that's just so, I think that's a disservice. That's a disservice to humanity. I think what makes us great is the incredible diversity that all of us have. And yes, celebrating that, I think, is so much more important than trying to conform to a standard that isn't the standard. You know what I mean? Like, there can't be a standard for humanity. That's insane. Yeah. And so I love that. That's incredible. Y'all, follow this Instagram.
Do it. Follow it.
Thanks so much. Yeah, like just again, kind of touching on that, just to kind of like finalize, is anyone that's listening, like, if you've ever been told that you can't do something, do that thing.
Yes.
If you identify as a male and you would like to wear a dress, and people say, no, don't do that. Please, if not for me, if not for you, do it for Arcade and Prime, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do that.
Do it.
The world is full of far too much excellence to lock ourselves in boxes based on arbitrary archetypes.
Preach.
Break them, everyone.
100% agree.
There we go.
Go away from the normal. Be fabulous and do things.
Be wild. Embrace the weird.
Embrace the weird. Embrace the wonderful. And I think that is probably the best spot. So listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible romantic dinner with the DM. Ryudowski, thank you so much for joining us. And listeners, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Romantic Dinner with the DM. We are so excited to have you on our journey as we learn about the worlds and stories created by dungeon masters and game masters in this wonderful, wonderful medium of TTRPGs.
We've got new episodes coming out weekly, and if you're jonesing for new content in between, check out our YouTube.
Link below.
And follow us on twitch.tv/Arcade and Prime.
We'll see you next week and really hope that you enjoyed the episode. Bye.